without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Chris Williamson. Chris is representing Vodacom. He's actually calling in from Johannesburg, from South Africa. Vodacom is a telecom operator there, part of Vodafone Group. And Chris is responsible for driving the growth and the evolution of M-Pesa, which is Africa's, for now, biggest payments platform and disruptor with over 40 million active customers across Vodacom's group footprint in Tanzania, Mozambique, the DRC, Lesotho, and Ghana. M-Pesa is a mobile phone based money transfer service for payments and microfinancing. And Chris himself has over 15 years of experience spanning telecoms, technology, financial services, predominantly on African markets. Also, we've been talking actually a couple of days ago, and Chris shared that, yeah, he's also very busy being a parent. He's the father of 3 kids, and his 4th is on the way. So we hope that he or she will let us still listen to Chris for another hour. And yeah, that's it, I would say. So Chris, I would say in normal circumstances, the floor is yours, but in this case, I guess the screen is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Fabiola. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to be in the same time zone as many of you in Central Europe. I'm sitting in Johannesburg in South Africa, but it's also 10:15 in the morning here. Let me just share my screen. I'm going to take you through a short presentation. Sorry, go on 1 second. There we go. Great, hopefully that's working. So I was saying to Fabiola a couple of days ago, I speak regularly at conferences about M-Pesa and our journey as a business, and in terms of really focusing on our products and how we're expanding our user base and adoption of those products. So it's been a great challenge today to think about telling the story a bit differently and focusing on less on what we're doing and a bit more on how we're doing it and how we're changing the way we work to really become more of an agile organization for the future. So when I talk about M-Pesa 2.0, I'm really talking about, you know, the next generation M-Pesa platform, but also about the next generation M-Pesa working and operating model to build that platform and enable it. So just to go back to about 2005, you may have heard the M-Pesa story before. I won't spend too long on this, but M-Pesa basically was the brainchild of a guy called Nick Hughes, who is sitting in Vodafone Group in our corporate social responsibility department. And he'd been working across Vodafone's African markets and spent quite a bit of time in Kenya and other markets. And he'd seen how microfinance was really becoming a huge thing in Africa. And at the same time, our mobile networks were expanding rapidly and starting to digitally include millions of customers that, you know, even we didn't expect would be included so quickly. So he had an idea to try and digitize microfinance payments in Africa. And he took it to Vodafone Group Board, and he took it also to DFID, which is it was DFID at the time, now UKAID, the UK International Development Agency, who agreed to co-fund it. And then he started talking to Safaricom in Kenya. And just for clarity, we don't fully own Safaricom. It's not exactly a Vodafone subsidiary. It's we own 35%, so we're the joint biggest shareholder, but it's effectively it's got its own governance. But Safaricom, and particularly Michael Joseph, who was the CEO of Safaricom at the time, got excited about the idea. And over the next 18 months, they started a pilot. And as I said, it was initially focused on digitizing microfinance. You can see a Kenyan microfinance group in the slide sitting under a tree. But as they started piloting it, they also included what you would call a P2P transfer button to enable people within these microfinance groups just to send money to each other. And to everyone's surprise, that started getting phenomenal usage, much more than the microfinance side of it. And they realized, talking to some of these individuals more and more, that basically there was a massive domestic remittance market in Kenya, just like there is in other African markets. But at the time, people were forced to use very basic means of sending money. So, you know, at the time, bank penetration in Africa was only about 10 to 15% max. So very few people had a bank account, because bank accounts in Africa are expensive. They're typically big fixed fees. You need very high grade KYC, which most people don't have. And their branches are just in the big cities, and even their ATMs don't go much beyond the big cities. So bank penetration very low. People were basically sending money by giving cash in an envelope to bus or coach drivers, or by using informal Havala systems where you have shopkeepers who are, you know, maybe brothers in different parts of the country who agree over the phone while you're in the store to exchange cash with each other. So very expensive and insecure and not at all instant means of sending money. And they realized there was this huge opportunity to do something differently. So that was how M-Pesa was born, and it launched formally in 2007. And the simple slogan was "Send money home." That's what M-Pesa's core focus was: these digitizing these domestic remittances. And since then, I won't take you through the whole history, but as you're probably aware, not only has M-Pesa exploded in Kenya, but M-Pesa has exploded in many other countries in Africa. And I oversee the 5 countries here outside of Kenya, which are all part of the Vodafone and Vodacom stable. But not only that, it's also spawned a whole mobile money industry, which is biggest in Africa, but it's also very, very strong in parts of Asia and Latin America as well. And so today, I'm using slightly old numbers here from our last financial year. We're about to release our new year-end numbers, which will be substantially higher again than these. So I didn't want to jump the gun on our annual report, but you'll see bigger numbers coming soon. But today we have well over 40 million monthly active users on M-Pesa. And when I say active, I mean this is using it at least once a month. But most of our customers are using it more than 15 times a month. So it's a very high frequency use product. Those customers are supported by 500,000 agents. And these agents are like our bank branches. You probably know the model. It's mom and pop stores, it's street vendors, but not any mom and pop store or street vendor. We choose them really carefully to make sure they're trusted, that they can hold cash liquidity and e-money liquidity, and that they have time to speak to a customer. So you can go to an agent in any one of these markets and very quickly with usually a single form of ID, get an M-Pesa account, and then at that agent you can also deposit or withdraw cash, just like at a bank branch or an ATM. So those agents kind of give the capillarity of M-Pesa, so that they're really our backbone. And we've added to that in the last couple of years, well over 200,000 active merchants. So these are, again, micro enterprises, typically, as well as big supermarkets or retailers who are willing to accept face-to-face payment with M-Pesa. Together, these customers and agents and merchants, they transact more than $500 million a day. And it's actually our transaction volume, it was more than 11 billion transactions last year. To put that into perspective, that's more than PayPal globally. It's also more than Visa and MasterCard combined in the whole African continent. So we have phenomenal scale despite only being in 6 markets. And Kenya is the most famous M-Pesa market. It has well over 25 million active customers, but we have well over 15 million, it's closer to 20, active customers in the other markets as well. And places like Tanzania, we have 7 million active customers. Mozambique, we have nearly 5 million, and we're growing very quickly. And in Lesotho, we have just shy of 1 million, but there are only 1.5 million adults. So M-Pesa has really been a phenomenal success, not just in Kenya. And as you can see, it's really spawned a whole industry which has been incredibly successful in many other markets, mostly operated by other telecoms companies like MTN, Orange, Airtel, or Telenor, but not exclusively. There are many players who are not telcos operating in this space. When I say mobile money, I'm talking really about this model that's supported by not just a mobile menu, but actually the agents that enable us to digitize the cash. That's the key part of mobile money. Through this model, M-Pesa has really been a life changer for our customers. Just in the money transfer use case, so we've sent billions of person-to-person transfers in the last year, as I said. Now, these transfers have been proven by economists at MIT, for example, and Chicago Law School, to really make a huge difference to families, especially when they're in some kind of crisis. They're able to mobilize funds quickly from friends and family. And that means there's been a marked, something like a 1 or 2% reduction in extreme poverty in the last few years, just because of M-Pesa. It's also brought hundreds of thousands of women out of subsistence agriculture and into having the confidence and the financial resilience to start their own businesses. But beyond that core use case, M-Pesa has expanded, and it's no longer just a money transfer service. It's now a payments platform, and also a platform for cross-border remittances. So in the international money transfer space, you may be aware that this is an old industry which has been charging incredibly high and I think very unjustified prices to send money from places like Germany or the UK into Africa. Typically, you pay well over 10%, maybe 15, even 20% of the amount that you're sending. We've been able to digitize this, and by partnering with the right kind of players, really bring down the costs of sending money from Europe into and America and the Middle East into Africa, but also between African countries. And not only have we brought down the cost, but we've made it instant and very safe for the sender and the receiver. And today, you can send money between M-Pesa wallets in Kenya and Tanzania, as an example, and pay only 3 to 4% on the amount that you're sending, whereas previously you'd be paying more like 10, 15%. Enterprise payments, we enable more than 25,000 organizations. These are businesses, small and large, NGOs, government departments, both national and regional. M-Pesa is used by all kinds of organizations, both to collect payments, things like bill payments, utilities, taxes, license fees, also to disperse payments. And in the last year with the COVID crisis, M-Pesa has been used by relief agencies like UNHCR to disperse funds, emergency relief funds, to more than 1 million households across our 6 markets. And then finally, financial services. So focusing here a bit on lending. So we offer micro lending, both term loans and overdraft products. And we've enabled more than 15 million of our customers to become first-time borrowers and to access competitive interest rates, whereas before they would have been at the mercy of loan sharks and informal lenders. And the flip side, we also offer a lot of savings products. So we have a wide range of savings products now, including products like you'd see in in European markets, but also things like group savings, which goes back to this microfinance use case of people actually putting money into a common pot, and then each month one person gets to take money out. It's a very familiar way of saving to our customers, and previously they could only do it with cash and having to travel back to their village, say, to deposit money into a physical lockbox. So we've digitized that whole thing. So I think that probably covers the impact. I'm keen to come now to the story of how we've become agile. So I just want to zoom in for a minute on our governance and our ownership structure. And this has been a real challenge for us over the last few years, especially as we've gone from a simple money transfer product to something much more sophisticated and complex, and increasingly access through digital apps rather than just a basic USSD menu on a feature phone. So effectively, you've got sort of 3 organizations, big organizations involved in M-Pesa. Vodafone Group, which directly operates Vodafone Ghana, where we have M-Pesa. They're the majority shareholder of Vodacom Group, where I sit now, which then operates M-Pesa in 4 markets you can see here: Tanzania, Congo, Mozambique, and Lesotho. And then you've got Safaricom, which we are a shareholder of, but we don't control, which operates Kenya, our biggest M-Pesa market. This is nothing like, if you looked at Facebook or Google or PayPal, their structure of how they operate in different countries does not look like this. And it's largely because we're not just because we're a telecoms company, but also because we're an EMI, effectively licensed as an EMI organization with M-Pesa, an e-money issuer. And so each of our telco businesses in the Vodacom stable has a subsidiary fully owned by that local telco, which then operates the M-Pesa platform. Further complexity is we have a separate platform in every market. So there's not a single core sitting in the cloud at the moment. Very little is centrally hosted today. It's sitting in silos, and that's largely because of data localization regulation by our central banks, but other things as well. There's a lot of reluctance for us to even move things into a cloud, even if data is completely tokenized. So this creates major challenges, and the result has been that for the last few years, M-Pesa has been operating in quite a siloed way in terms of innovation. So, Kenya, big market, well-resourced, they've been able to do lots of innovation. Our other markets have operated quite independently. There's been coordination around the core platform, which Huawei have developed for us. All of the markets have the same core software, but they're on different releases. And then they've been innovating a lot of products themselves locally on fairly shoestring budgets, to be honest. So I think they've achieved a lot with quite little, but it's not been the ideal model at all. So the last 2 or 3 years since I joined the organization, we've been very focused not just on our strategy of what we want to build and what we want to become for our consumers, but how we build it and how we fix this organizational challenge that we have, which there's not really an easy way out of. We can't wrap everything up in one entity easily because of our local regulation. So a year ago, almost exactly, we set up a joint venture to fix this problem. And the joint venture is a 50-50 joint venture between Vodacom Group and Safaricom PLC. And it's headquartered in Kenya, but with operations in the UK, where we have some Vodafone people already working on M-Pesa, and in South Africa, which is closer to the Vodacom markets, and where in some areas we can get talent quicker and easier. And so this is an organization, three locations, but one organization, and its mission is to build the next generation M-Pesa platform and enable us to really become one M-Pesa, not several different M-Pesas, depending on which market you're in. And focus areas include partnerships, not just partnerships for each market, but partnerships for M-Pesa as a whole, both for things like payments and remittances, but also for technology. Digital platforms and moving things to the cloud as we get permission, financial services and payments. I'll come to this again in a moment. So I just want to focus on the transformation that M-Pesa Africa and other changes in the organization are helping us to make. So firstly, we're transitioning, as I said, from having kind of multiple product factories where we're launching different products in each market to having one joint venture, one product center of excellence that's building the next generation platform and products for every market to deploy and configure locally. We're moving from having a fragmented platform on different releases, on different servers in each country, to a cloud platform with everything centralized. Now, this is a transition we're at the very beginning of, and as I said, the big constraint is regulation. But we've had very good news in the last 2 months. One of our key regulators has said that they will enable us to move our core platform into a private cloud, which is fantastic news, and we're confident that other markets will follow the same path. We have already started centralizing hosting for a lot of our new products, like our smartphone app and our AML platform. Those are now cloud hosted in one location for nearly all markets. So we're on that journey, but it's not a journey we can take in one giant leap. We have to break it up into small steps. Restricted investments. So because of our fragmented organizational structure, it's been hard for any one market to justify big R&D investment into M-Pesa. And as a result, as I said, I think we've done a huge amount, but on quite relatively, especially when you compare us with some big global fintechs of the same scale, on quite a shoestring budget. So through this joint venture, we've been able to leverage huge commitments, both from Vodacom and Vodafone, our parent company, as well as from Safaricom, to ensure we can build a fantastic next generation platform. And we're talking hundreds of millions of euros, not tens of millions, really, really substantial R&D investment. We're moving also from, in terms of the operating model, from a very much a traditional waterfall approach, which is designed, I guess, to ensure very strong governance around the core platform, and that we don't break anything, because when customers are moving money around and you break it, you'll know they get very upset if something doesn't work. We're moving from that to I guess, a model where we separate off agile squads building out the new products and features. Still, the core platform is very much ring-fenced and has its own teams operating still in very waterfall fashion around things like major upgrades. But new stuff like the smartphone app or our lending platform are operating on a much more agile basis. And we use the safe agile methodology. I'm not an agile expert, so I can't tell you a lot of detail on why we've chosen that one, although it is the Vodafone general safe, general agile methodology that we use. But we're already starting to see some massive results just from moving to an agile methodology. As some results from this, we've gone from it taking 3 to 4 months to connect a third party, that's probably best case, to 2 weeks or less through our open API and our developer portal. And so we've launched basically a single API for all markets. So whereas before you used to have to integrate separate to each M-Pesa market if you were a partner, say a payments player globally, e-commerce, or you could also be an international remittances provider, 6 different integrations, which meant they tended to do Kenya, maybe Tanzania, and then stop. Now we have a single open API gateway where you can integrate to all M-Pesa markets in one shot, and then that intelligently switches currency and pricing rules depending which market you're in. And then finally, we've gone from, again, best case, a 6-month release cycle, even on things like our smartphone app, to now a 6-week release cycle we're on, and we're working towards a 2-week release cycle quite soon. So the upshot of this is we become one M-Pesa with one agile team and way of working, one platform, and we become one partner for anyone that wants to work with us rather than 6 different partners. I think that covers the key points on how we're changing our operating model. I hope this works. I wanted to just quickly play a 2-minute video to show you now what we're building, and what this focuses on what M-Pesa is going to look like in 3 years' time. Oh, sorry, 2 years' time for one of our customers.
With over 100,000 easily accessible agents across the country, Neema can deposit and withdraw cash anywhere. The M-Pesa platform allows contextual payments based on biometric identifications and artificial intelligence. M-Pesa functionality is embedded within Neema's favorite social media and messaging services. has just received an offer from M-Pesa. M-Pesa helps merchants to grow their business by offering targeted location-based promotions to attract customers. M-Pesa enables merchants to create and manage their own digital loyalty schemes and rewards to keep customers loyal. M-Pesa provides rich credit scores and recommendations based on customers' digital transaction history. The M-Pesa Financial Services Marketplace allows banks, insurers, and microfinance institutions to offer M-Pesa customers, agents, and merchants a wide range of relevant loans, savings, and insurance products. M-Pesa automatically tops up Neema's prepaid electricity meter. Neema needs to find a new home for her old lamp. She is using the M-Pesa local marketplace to sell it easily and safely. Pesa ni M-Pesa. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodacom.
Great. I hope that worked. I hope you could hear it properly. That's the end of my presentation. So Fabiola, I think we can maybe take some questions if there are some.
Yeah. Thank you so much. For me, at least, the video worked. So I hope for the rest as well. Thank you so much, Chris, for this presentation. At Frontier, we're really huge fans of M-Pesa. We already talk about it a lot, but there is some questions for the audience. And I think that the first one from Daniel is a really interesting one. And here you go. So is M-Pesa driven by product or technology team?
Is M-Pesa driven by product or technology team? Sure, that's I guess a deep question in a way. Yeah, I think we're trying to be very consumer driven, and so it's really driven by, I guess, the way we prioritize what we build is based on feedback from all of our markets. So we have like a demand, what we call a demand prioritization matrix, where on a periodic basis, a couple of times a year, we take high level input from each of our markets on what capabilities and features they would most value next. And that's got to be based on a business case. So what kind of revenue uplift or customer stickiness or any other metrics we're looking at. So that's kind of how the high level guiding process for how we prioritize different parts of our roadmap. There's also more of a compliance driven side of it, which is, there's not a business case for building an AML platform, but it's, or upgrading an AML platform, I should say, but it's crucial. So things like that, we have a separate process, which is managed by our compliance and risk board. And so those are two kind of funnels that then define our roadmap, high level, but then within that, where, as I say, we're implementing Agile. So then the detail of what we build first and which stories get built, that's done on a much more short timescale basis. But I guess it is product or technology. I mean, our squads have product managers and developers and BAs and Scrum Masters, so it's very much working as one team. I don't know if I've answered the question properly, but
Daniel, you should let us know, please, in the chat. But I might add up to this, like, because you are present in so many countries, does technology actually that is available in all of those different companies, I guess, in different countries, play a role of a constraint for you?
It does actually. Yeah, that's a good question, Fabiola. So you see, we're very integrated to our telecoms platforms and our telecoms business. So, you know, we're using USSD messages. Most of our customers are not using a smartphone yet. They're using a feature phone. So we're using USSD and SMS messages. We depend on the network team for that. We use other APIs. We consume a lot of APIs from the GSM business. And at the moment, our GSM businesses have some different platforms, different billing platforms, different USSD gateway specifications and things. So yeah, there's at the moment the interfaces with the local platform, GSM platform, are quite different. So, but that's something that we're addressing. It's also part of our broader strategy for Vodacom Group, is to integrate what we call the DXL, the digital experience layer, which really creates like a standardized layer around the telco. That means the way we integrate to the telco is going to be completely standard in every market as well.
Cool. Well, that's a good challenge to solve.
Yeah.
Okay, before I bring in Akos, that's gonna have a fireside chat with you. I have one more question that I'm also personally really interested in, because we've been reading in the news quite actually recently, a few days ago, I guess it was, that MasterCard decided to invest so much money in the African market, like something like, I saw the number of what, $100 million, and support Airtel. And also, you know, to basically, yeah, I guess bring you a competitor on board, or?
Yeah,
I wanted to ask how you feel about this, and does it actually speed up for you the need to have this proper one M-Pesa team, and, you know, to move things forward a bit faster?
Yeah, I think I'm excited because I think we're coming into a time where mobile money has gone from being the kind of unappreciated stepchild of the telecoms business in our markets to the hero of the business. So in Vodacom Group now, in our markets where M-Pesa operates, we're roughly 20% of revenue, but more than half of revenue growth last financial year. So we are giving more additional revenue to Vodacom Group every year than the data business, which is our core telecoms business. So it's, you know, we've really got to a point where everyone's looking a lot more closely at what we're doing. Our colleagues, or peers, I should say, at MTN and Airtel have decided, and Airtel's already executing on this, as you mentioned, they've decided to spin out their mobile money businesses completely into a totally separate entity, and they're using that to raise investment. Airtel also got $100 million of funding from TPG Rise, which is a big US-based private equity fund, as well as the MasterCard deal you mentioned. MTN's announced they're going to do the same. I think we've already done it in a slightly different way. So with our joint venture, M-Pesa Africa. And the point is, I think the core thing is you need to be enabling investment at a much bigger scale, and you need to be operating as one business, not several different businesses. So at the moment, you know, M-Pesa, the P&L of M-Pesa sits still in each market. So we're not putting all the P&Ls, the whole picture, into one entity, but those markets are all supported by one joint venture, which is governed very closely by Vodacom and Safaricom. And, you know, my boss Shamil, who's Vodacom Group CEO, is making sure that we're working seamlessly together between the M-Pesa business in each market, and then the M-Pesa Africa joint venture. So we're basically achieving the same thing through a slightly different model.
Cool. Okay, thanks a lot for this answer. If we could quickly address, because we just received another one, we should already be having Akos here, but I think he's going to forgive us. There's a question from Ibrahim. How do you manage license requirements across the countries in Africa?
So yeah, when we started M-Pesa, you may know, in Kenya, we operated on like a letter of no objection. So there was no e-money framework. There's just banking regulation. But the Central Bank of Kenya took a very proactive and positive enabling view. Without the great leadership of the Central Bank of Kenya, mobile money wouldn't exist, to be honest. And they let us operate on a letter of no objection, which means there was no formal framework, and we were trusted to kind of self-govern this thing. But since then, and over time, in all of our markets, we now have basically e-money regulation. It's actually very similar to the way that e-money operates in Europe, for example, where we're not a deposit-taking institution, so we're a payments business, and any money that our customers deposit, we then put into trust with a range of different banks to make sure it's safe. And so, yeah, the licensing requirements have evolved a lot over the last decade since M-Pesa launched and become a lot more formalized, and they're still evolving. But the good thing is, I think our regulators are moving in the same kind of direction. And they're also very much moving in line with global standards and best practices, like the Fifth Money Laundering Directive. Our central banks look to these global directives to make sure that we have the right anti-money laundering or CFT capabilities on our platform. So I think, there are some local market specific licensing requirements and capital and liquidity requirements, especially, but overall, things are quite well harmonized. I'd say some African markets are not on the same page as us yet. So if you look at the licensing regime in South Africa, there isn't a proper e-money regime here. It's quite different, and you have to have a settlement bank partner, which I think, to be very honest, makes it a lot harder to do. So that's what we tried at M-Pesa a couple of times in South Africa, and it didn't work. And the licensing regime here was a big part of why it didn't work.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Ibrahim, I hope we answered, or Chris actually answered your question and everything that you were interested in. So now I would like to bring in Akosh, that's going to talk to you a little bit more about, grill you a little bit more about, I guess, your experience with M-Pesa. And Akosh is the managing partner of Frontiera. He's a design strategist by trade, and that would be it from me, and I hand it over to Akosh now.
Thanks, Fabiola.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabiola. And hi, Chris, again. We just talked about half a day ago, but still, it's really great to be in this discussion with you. So the first question that I wrote up for myself, partly based on your presentation, is if I look at this new model that you're putting together with M-Pesa Africa, with this joint venture model, with a little bit of centralization of your investment and centralization of your R&D and your technology, I see the obvious upsides, which makes it probably easier to use the same technologies over and over again, and to use the knowledge of the team better internally. But at the same time, I have the assumption that it has trade-offs. For example, trade-offs that you are getting a little bit further away from your customers, from your markets directly. How are you managing this trade-off? How are you keeping in contact with your customers or your markets?
I was hoping you could give me some advice about that, Akosh. Yeah, we're learning, and I think you're right. There's definitely trade-offs, although we're obviously trying to find ways to make it, to manage and mitigate the downsides. And I think actually there are opportunities to be more consumer-centric, even with a centralized model. I think that the main way we can do that, or one of the main ways, is through using big data better. So we're building a data lake in M-Pesa Africa for all of our markets, obviously anonymized and encrypted, to keep regulators happy and to make sure we're GDPR compliant. And that data lake, we already have a team of data scientists. At the moment, they're using like a separate data lake in each market that they have access to. But I think with a centralized data lake and data scientists that are centralized, then we can start to get much deeper consumer insights, and also build products which are much more individualized and priced and cross-sold in a much more individualized way. So I think in a lot of ways, big data and things like AI and machine learning can only work really well when we're centralized, and they allow us to become a lot more consumer-centric and individualize the products to each customer. But I think another key thing we've had a lot of debate about how much we centralize, and I think we're not trying to suddenly move everything completely central. So each local market still has its own teams of developers and its own R&D budget, although increasingly they need to use that to rather customize and integrate the products that M-Pesa Africa is building rather than build new things. But I think one of the key things we're doing in these squads is making sure that they have people from the local market teams in them, that they're not just central teams sitting in ivory tower. And the reality is, I didn't mention this in the presentation, but we actually did have a central team before of about 60 or 70 people, but they were sitting in Vodafone Group in the UK. And in terms of governance, they weren't really accountable at all to the markets, and the markets weren't accountable to them. So they were going and building stuff that they thought the markets needed. Meanwhile, the markets weren't finding the product relevant and weren't using it. So I think with a centralized model, without the right collaboration and the right governance, you can end up just wasting a lot of money building stuff that no one uses. So I think we're very mindful of the risks of that, having been in that world before. And when we set up M-Pesa Africa, we've actually kept that team, great people, but just sitting in the wrong part of the organization, not close enough to what we're doing on the ground. So we've kept that team, and that's our UK part of M-Pesa Africa, but they're now governed by Vodacom and Safaricom directly. So, if something doesn't get delivered or if something breaks, they know who to fire. And if something works really well, they know who gets a big bonus. So the incentives and the governance are much more streamlined, and also it enables that tighter collaboration with the markets. And we're already seeing, we launched M-Pesa Africa a year ago. We had a feedback session with all the markets a couple of weeks ago, and the feedback was that not only has delivery improved massively, we're getting much better product much more quickly, which is what we all wanted to hear, but also that the spirit of collaboration is radically different from what it was before, and teams are really working together, and it feels like we're becoming one M-Pesa, not headquarters and local. And also we try and rotate people, so actually having this bigger entity that we're all part of means there are much better opportunities to move around the organization and get promoted.
Okay. Actually, I was a little bit surprised about your answer, that you had such a strong stance about being data-driven and operating a big data platform. Because for me, if I look at the M-Pesa brand, and for example, just the video that you showed, and I really hope that everybody was able to see and hear that videos, because it's very sissimilar to a lot of explainer videos that I have seen from M-Pesa, which always have this very strong community-focused, grassroots kind of feeling. It just radiates that feeling that you are on the market, you are talking to your customers, you are talking to your partners, you are really embedded in the culture that you're operating in. And my guess would have been a more qualitative approach. So it's already a surprise for me that you're rather focusing on quantitative data.
Thanks, Akosh. Well, I hope it's a good surprise. I think that video shows where we're going in like a sketch kind of a way. The reality, as I said, is that most customers are still using a feature phone. So smartphone penetration is only like 30–40% in most of our markets. It's low. The power users, the early adopters, are on smartphone, but the big base is still on feature phones. But we have already been able to use big data to do things like credit scoring, and also recommendations engines based on machine learning. And even we're using AI in our customer care already. We have bots, which we're building, and we're kind of making more sophisticated all the time. So we've been able to use these techniques, which usually in Europe only get used for smartphone-based apps, but we're using them in Africa for stuff running on USSD menus. And at the end of the day, you have to make sure every product you build is accessible to someone using a basic 7-point USSD menu, just as it is on a smartphone. So that's definitely one of our design challenges. But I think in a way, having to do stuff for app and USSD at the same time forces you to do things in a way that's simple but powerful, which, you know, I'm not a UX expert, but I think in an app, that's also an important principle. You don't, you know, things still need to be easy to find.
Yeah. That's absolutely very true, and that's actually something that that I can really follow up on, because what I also wanted to ask from you is that so M-Pesa is kind of a culturally driven or a very purpose-driven company. So it's very much focused around providing access to finances to people who previously didn't really have access to these kind of finances, which I'm guessing would require quite some commitment, like cultural commitment from within the teams. And you're operating in multiple locations with multiple teams. How are you keeping up this common sense of purpose from cultural point of view? And again, in a tech organization or a tech heavy organization.
Yeah, and especially in the last year, it's been a big change with the shift to pretty much everyone remote working. Yeah, look, I mean, we in normal business as usual, there's a lot of travel. You know, we try and have FaceTime together with the leadership teams several times a year, and I used to be, you know, on an aeroplane once or twice a week going to our different markets to try and keep that. But I think actually COVID's shown us that it's been a leveler in a way, because, you know, if you're in a world where everyone is working in the office all the time, in the local office, then people are thinking, you know, very much that their core team that they're part of is their local team. Whereas when you have a multinational organization like M-Pesa and everyone's online, it completely levels the playing field. So there's no difference now between me having a chat with Epimac, who runs M-Pesa in Tanzania, versus him talking with his local team. We're on screen anyway. And so I think it's actually been quite helpful in this year of COVID, that it's also been the first year of M-Pesa Africa, when we're really saying we're becoming one team, because we're all sitting in front of Microsoft Teams or Zoom all day, and it's leveled that playing field. But yeah, look, it's a challenge. And I think we also have to recognize that each of our markets has its own culture and its own nuances. So certainly we're never going to become like a Facebook, where we've got, you know, very completely centralized product teams. We're always going to have a huge amount of local customization, and that's not just language, but, you know, pricing and even the products. So in the DRC, in the Congo, it's a dual currency market. So we've got this US dollars and also Congolese francs. And so, you know, in a market like that, there are a whole new range of use cases and products you need to build, FX related products. And so we need to you know, there's not going to be a scenario where we don't still have big local teams that are very connected to the pulse of the local market and the local consumers and merchants.
Mm-hmm. And as we are in an Agile conference, I have to ask, so how does this intertwine with the Agile transformation that you're going through? Like, you're starting to use SAFe, while at the same time you're switching to a more remote team, and at the same time centralizing, decentralizing, federalizing your whole operation. How is Agile working out for this? Is it helping? I know you have to say it does, but how?
Like, look, so I'm not in a squad or anything. I'm not like actively part of the Agile process. I've just done the high level training. So I'm more in a place where I'm just looking at the results, and the results have been excellent so far. And we're still only really, I'd say 6. You know, we've been talking Agile for a long time, and we piloted it for a couple of years on a couple of specific product areas. We're now 6 months into proper wholesale rollout of Agile and moving everyone into that. And I think what's been really great is our head of M-Pesa in Mozambique. I was chatting to him about it a couple of days ago, and he said, you know, I was skeptical of this Agile methodology, and, you know, we've all had new methodologies, new corporate tools pushed on us over the years that we've kind of, you know, you have a day where you get excited about it, and then it just becomes like a bureaucratic.
Sometimes it becomes just the flavor of the month. Yeah,
exactly. But the difference is, he said, you know, M-Pesa Africa kind of started for them the transformation to Agile, so they weren't really doing it. that's different. In Kenya, they were already fully in agile teams, but in our markets, in some of our markets, they weren't. But since then, because of how they've seen how it works, the whole team's got excited about it, and it's accelerated their local transition to agile squads as well, not just in M-Pesa, but for the business as a whole. And we've seen, yeah, I think I think it also bears through in our results. So we have apps. The M-Pesa Live app is live now in all of our markets. And in the last 6 months, our App Store rating in Tanzania, for example, has gone from 3.6 to now 4.4. And like every release, it goes up another couple of decimal points. So, you know, we're aiming for a 5. And I think it won't take us long to get there because of this agility that we have now. So, look, I can't tell you why safe and, you know, why not some other maybe more full fat agile methodology. Maybe we'll go there in future. But definitely what I can say is that it's been a tool that's been very, I think, really right for us as an organization, and the timing's been really good. And so, yeah, really happy so far.
Okay, so basically you are in the middle of a successful looking agile transformation at the moment.
Yeah.
And you happen to also be in the right time. And a little bit more about, well, not that much about specifically the agility or this kind of more agile operation or squad-based operations, but also what Fabiola asked you in one of the questions, that the African finance market is kind of known for these big steps, like big leaps forward, and M-Pesa is a very good example of a huge leap that is quite unusual, I think, for us in the European markets, that whole markets are just switching from cash to mobile payment. I mean, for us in Europe, it was 10 years and I don't know, 10 steps in between from getting from cash to mobile payments, and we are just experimenting with it in most of the European markets. But in this sense, I just have a feeling that that M-Pesa might be facing more innovation pressure with these new forward leaps getting to the market, either by investment of new companies or by the really fast emergence of crypto or different FX providers. How are you keeping your innovative edge?
That's a good question. It's a big question. Yeah, I think you're right that we are in a very fast evolving competitive environment. And at the same time, a fast evolving technology environment. So there are things like blockchain, which are, you know, create new competitors, but also going to create, I think, much bigger opportunities for us. I think you know, we have a very strong emphasis on competitive intelligence and we're constantly looking into our own markets, but also East and West for inspiration and to educate ourselves about what's going on. So, you know, I spent quite a lot of time in China, seeing what's going on there, and it's incredible. You know, the likes of WeChat.
I know.
They've just done amazing things, and I guess they're having, Alipay particularly, having a tougher time now in the Chinese market with their regulators. But I think it actually, look, China's different because already all of their customers had a bank account, so they haven't had to digitize distribution and manage that cash interface like we do on M-Pesa still. That it's been an easier thing for them to do from scratch, and also smartphone penetration is very high, so it's much more of a digital platform, whereas M-Pesa is like a fintech business married to a grassroots FMCG distribution business, which is massive, and that's still a lot of our focus. So we're different, very different to China, but we look there for inspiration. And I think the way, you know, Alipay and WeChat have leapfrogged the whole kind of 4-party payments model, and or 3-party, but it's really 4-party payments model. And, you know, they're like really, they've done something very, very different and fresh compared to the established payments infrastructure models in Europe and the US. Yeah, but at the same time, you know, what we do in Africa is always going to be different. We certainly, you know, see developments from, obviously Facebook is launched in, you know, launched wallet businesses in a couple of markets now, bigger emerging markets, and we talk to them. We, you know, we partner with them in lots of different areas already, not just on M-Pesa, but on the bigger business. We look at other big players, the Chinese players, Google, global payments players, and we know that Africa is becoming a very hot area now, and much, you can see just the increased investment stories and big exits in Africa in the last year is very different from where it was a couple of years ago. So we're bracing ourselves for new competitors, but also, you know, we're confident in our position. Firstly, because we have this phenomenal distribution network, which is essential if you want to do anything mass market in Africa. If you don't have distribution, then you're back to 2007, where, you know, you can only serve a minority of customers who have a bank account. And yeah, we're also confident in our innovation model now to ensure that actually what we offer is going to be on par or better than what any other global tech company could build for our customers, and we know them a lot better than they do. So yeah, we're confident, but constantly looking around for inspiration and also for partnerships, because certainly there are bigger and bigger opportunities for us now to partner with these kind of players.
It's just really great to say that one of your competitive advantages is that you just know your customers better. It's one of the greatest thing to hear as a designer, that the company believes that that this is one of their main competitive advantages on the market, or what can keep them stay forward. But really, you're a big company. You're at the moment running a kind of massive operation in all these countries, and at the same time you have to partner up with a lot of players in an ecosystem. So there are larger players in your ecosystem, there are the financial industry players, and on the other end you have your local distributors, your retailers, your actually, I do not know the right M-Pesa terminology for these small partners that are used for top-up points. How are you navigating in such a complex ecosystem? Because it's a complex ecosystem that you are in the middle of.
You're right, and people. We've had a couple of instances recently where people say M-Pesa is like a closed loop financial services platform. We're the opposite of closed loop. I mean, like you say, our ecosystem is huge. We have very advanced interoperability now, so you can send money in nearly all of our markets to nearly any bank, or money from any bank to M-Pesa, and it's always in real time. Every M-Pesa transaction is real time, or, you know, within like 2 or 3 seconds if it's cross border. So we have an incredibly advanced ecosystem of big financial services players, local banks, other local mobile money players, global remittance companies, global payments companies as well, and that's growing all the time. I think, look, I think one of the ways we manage, then there's a long tail, you know, in the payment space. We want to enable our customers to pay, you know, 20,000 different e-commerce stores globally. And there are a huge number of our customers buying stuff from China, small traders buying things that they can then sell locally, and increasingly from Europe. And also there's we're seeing an explosion in demand for digital content, like things like Netflix or Spotify. But, you know, the number of merchants is vast. So for the big players, we like to do direct integrations, but for the long tail, we have to work through aggregators. So we're partnering with some of Europe's biggest PSPs, payment services providers, at the moment, and excited about that, because they're gonna, you know, they're integrated to thousands and thousands of merchants, and that's going to enable us to really make M-Pesa a globally accepted payments wallet. Then I think if you talk about the local strategy, it's still very much boots on the ground for our agents, and for our 500,000 agents and our 200,000 plus merchants. We have hundreds of people today who are out on the street, walking around, visiting agents, visiting merchants, asking them how it's going, looking at their numbers, training new agents, managing fraud. You can't do this business without a lot of people on the ground, because fundamentally, you know, this is informal economy that we're operating in, and we're helping to digitize.
If I can jump in a second, because we still have one question from the audience that maybe Chris, you could quickly.
And we have 1 minute, I know.
Could you imagine a similar model being implemented also in Europe, or is it more appropriate for emerging countries that have large amount of unbanked?
I think if you picked up the M-Pesa app today and compared it to like N26 or Monzo or Revolut, you wouldn't see, in terms of the range of products we offer, it's not so different. And I think there's quite a lot of similarities in how we partnered with banks and use banking infrastructure and payments infrastructure to offer faster, cheaper, more accessible services. I think the agent part is different. I don't think there's a big need for agents in Europe, where you've got banks and ATMs everywhere, because of the higher, I guess, the higher GDP and the higher population density. So yeah, I see lots of similarity with some other businesses. I think I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, but I do see more and more convergence in between what African fintech looks like and what European or American or Asian fintech looks like. Just the supporting rails look different, but the actual products and services we develop on top of those rails, I think, are becoming increasingly similar.
Thank you so much for this answer. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing all the insights. It was a pleasure. Akosh, would you like to add something?
Just thanking you for joining us. It was really great meeting you. It was really great having this discussion with you, and seeing your insights about your products, your market, and about innovation. And I really hope that we can continue this discussion.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks. Well,
thank you. Lots of luck. Good luck for your wife. Yeah, stay healthy, stay safe. Of course, you know, the usual recently. And thanks a lot again.
Thanks, Fabiola. Thanks, Akosh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.